Hello and welcome to TPK Roleplay for something completely new. My name is Proper Nerdy. I'm a TPK staff member, graphic designer, role player, game master, and sometimes game designer. And so tonight we are playing a brand new game that I wrote about the end of the world, Cataclysmal, a story about saviors. This game is not quite a traditional role-playing game, but a storytelling game about surviving the end of the world. They were the best of us, and every story urges you to be your best self too. In this game, you tell the story about the days that led up to the Cataclysm, and about the people who gave their lives in the hope that humanity might survive. They may never have known they were important, but for those who did make it out alive, we tell stories about those we've lost. Join us around the campfire as we tell you the story of their last days and how we survived. This is a content warning for tonight's episode. Might be a little dark, especially with all that is going on in the world right now. All of my players around the virtual table have consented to the topics that they're comfortable with, but if you, the viewer, ever feel overwhelmed by the story, please step away from the computer, take a breath, and come back to us when you're feeling up to it. For more information on mental health resources available to you, use !get help in the chat at any time. I'm going to be going through the game as the writer and also as a player. So I'm going to go through the rules one at a time. But at first, I wanted to show you how we're going to set up the beginning of this game. HP is going to help me as he's streaming right now. And we need to all roll unique D6s. So I'm going to go first since I'm first in the overlay order. And HP, you're going to write down what each of our unique numbers is, right? Lovely. I rolled a nice round 3. So if you could put 3 as my savior die number, that'd be great. Whenever you're ready, HP, Chrissy, you can roll.
Okay, I have rolled a 2.
Lovely.
Next.
Ash and Rabbit?
I got you. Let's see. That looks like a 4 to me.
Lovely. Next up, HP.
HP needs to move the 4 down to Ash, and then
Take your time.
roll 2, which can't happen. A 5. I'm the 5.
Which I believe makes magic 1.
Nope.
It's myself and Kaya.
Oh, Kaya, right. Okay, my apologies. Go
No
wild.
worries.
Kaya, you're next.
That is a 3. Let me re-roll. This might take a little while.
That's how dice work. Only you have to do it. Magic doesn't have to.
I hold your fate as well as my own in my hands.
No pressure.
Or you could just flip a coin. Do you have like a coin?
We could.
Just 1 or 6 at this point.
I rolled a 1.
1 it is.
Okay, that makes magic 6.
Bringing up the rear.
And with that out of the way, I'd like to introduce my players. If you could go around in overlay order and tell us who you are and how you're feeling playing a game that you've never played before. I believe we're starting with Chrissy again.
Yeah. Hi guys, I'm Chrissy Kritz. I'll be playing Chrissy.
Well, we'll get to that in a moment.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. How am I feeling about playing this? I'm excited. I think that playing Generational was great. I was in that. I think that it's always a pretty interesting way to look at storytelling when we play games like this. So I'm excited for it. But I'm going to ask a lot of questions. So Ash, how about you? How do you feel?
Hey, that's me. I'm Ash. I go by Ash and Rabbit here on Twitch and all over the internet. I am also playing insert blank name here. I too am excited. I'm definitely nervous. Anytime you hop into like a new game, specifically a new system, there's always a lot of nerves that come with it. Like, oh gosh, golly god darn it, am I doing it right? Am I going to fudge it up? Who knows? But it's going to be a lot of fun.
I will tell you that any story you tell is doing it right, technically, so
Tight.
I believe in you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to pass it over to HP.
Hello, I am the Last Hit Point Hero, and I will, I guess I'm really just looking forward to seeing how the night goes. Also, I can't listen to myself while talking because that creates an infinite loop. It's reading through the rules. I read through them Proper first kind of asked me to take part, and I'm excited. I'm excited to see the stories that come out. I'm excited to be at the table with these fantastic people, and I'm eager. So, over to Kaya.
Hi, everybody. I am Kaya, and I have a reputation for playing characters who die really early, really often. So I am very happy to be here. And
So you rolled a 1 or a 6?
I believe I rolled the 1.
Okay, yep. So
Yeah.
you're gonna die pretty
The
early.
habit continues.
And the beautiful thing about playing a game as, one of the very first playtests is that there's nobody who can show up in chat going like, "No, you're playing it wrong," because you can, audience, you can, but you first have to go over to Proper Nerdy's itch page and buy this game for the low, low price of...
It's currently $0, so any money you want to give me is lovely, but you don't have to pay a goddamn dime if you want.
Unless you're going to correct the way we play, in which case your username must be used to purchase it, and it must be for at least $15.
I support this.
Same.
Anyway, up to magic?
All right, I'm that Magic Juice. Hello. Those of you in the TPK community might recognize me as the GM for Queen's Gambit and other almost exclusively D&D things. My not D&D role-playing game experience has been opened up several times with TPK, so I'm honored to be here again with Proper sort of guiding the helm this time, even though he's playing as well, so double duty.
I feel like one of the first times we played together was Mecha Dudes, which was like D&D and also not D&D. So
it was
this
a
feels
D&D
appropriate.
Story very bastardized in all the best ways. But anywho, as far as how I'm feeling tonight, I'm really excited about just pretty much pure collaborative storytelling. This is going to be cool. And yes, I share some of the nerves about like, oh, what am I going to do? Going to figure out in the moment, the whole like in the moment improv thing. But I think that's going to be a lot of the fun.
I appreciate that all of you were like, oh no, am I going to do it right? Because I know the game. I've brewed on it for the last, 6 months or something. And I wrote Generational, which is a story game where you tell the history of a world. And the reason I wrote this was because someone was like, hey, when does it end? And I was like, haha, it doesn't. So the next game I wrote based on Generational is a game where it does end pretty succinctly. And so that's where we've gotten to Cataclysmal. In case you're wondering, it is a real word and it's just archaic. So, as you may have surmised from some of our descriptions, this is a game where there are 6 saviors. They are people that gave their lives in order that others in the world might survive. And even if they didn't know they'd be important, they are to us after the fact. In this game, you don't play as any of the saviors. You will only ever refer to them as stories that you lived or any of a number of characters have lived with and experienced. They are named the same thing as the players. They are the in quote names that are below our names in the overlay. And those are the names of the saviors that we'll tell stories about tonight. And the savior dice number that I have on the overlay as well, that's the order in which they are going to die. They're going to die once around, and their deaths are what helped us survive the Cataclysm. And we're going to set up the world before the Cataclysm now in our very first round. This is a game that is played using regular playing cards. These are appropriate asteroid cards. And whenever you draw a card, you're going to look at a prompt in the appendix and tell a story based on that prompt. So I have to go first. Actually, no. Wait, no. Whoever 6 goes first. I know my own rules. And I'm going to be drawing the cards. So I'm going to do a little quick shuffle real quick. And we'll see what happens.
You're going to do great magic. It's all going to be okay.
You got this, dude.
This is it. You are around the campfire. We're like, this is the idea of like, you're around the campfire. You're just telling stories. That's all it is. It doesn't matter if your stories are, perfect. Just make them short and fast, or short and concise. I can't speak right now. This will be great for telling stories. Succinct is the word I was looking for. So let us get started with some spookier music, and let's go from there.
Ooh.
How about Fire Then Nothing?
Seems appropriate.
Yeah, we
So
can fuck with
perfectly
that.
themed.
Okay. Magic, you're going first, and then we're gonna go from 6 to 5 to 4, to 3 to 2 to 1.
Ooh.
The very first card we have drawn is the Red Joker. Please read the prompt for everyone, and we'll actually have to draw another card for this, but go ahead and tell us what that means.
The Red Joker, is that the devil?
Yes.
Oh boy. Okay. Your savior is flawed. Swap your die with someone whose number is higher than yours. I'm assuming that means anybody, since that is not the case. Okay. The next thing it says is if you're already 6. Oh, no, I have to put this back into play and draw again because I'm 6.
Yep.
Are you switching dice with anybody?
No, so
Oh, no? Just kidding.
Because I'm number 6, I have to draw a new prompt instead, or at least that's how I'm interpreting that.
yes, basically you're kind of a coward, so you push off your own death until later.
Oh, well,
So
shit.
just remember that for what's the name of your savior?
Justin.
Justin. So just remember that Justin is flawed and may try to skirt death on more than one occasion.
Ooh, I may
your-
use that. Okay.
There we go. Your next one is a Queen of Spades.
Oh, I get a double. Okay. Okay. War is about to break out. Who is fighting whom and what is their quarrel? You were caught in the crossfire of a dangerous fight. How does the savior keep you safe? Who doesn't make
Nope.
it?
You're just doing the first column. Just
Oh,
war
I'm
is about
sorry.
to break out. Who is fighting whom and what is their quarrel?
Okay.
Quarrel. That's a hard word. Yeah, also, as I said, rough conversation for the current political climate.
Yeah.
So if you want to be fantasy, you can. If you want to be real, you can. If you want to make
think
up a name of a country that doesn't exist, you can.
Well,
Literally,
it's-
nothing's off the table.
It says who is fighting whom, so I think I'm going to stretch the creativity muscles a little bit and see what pans out. So, go. That's
Yeah.
that's where we're at. Okay.
Yeah. Go for it.
Chrissy's like, yeah, I've been through this. I understand.
Fucking
Just
love-
go.
Yeah.
I love
All
this
right.
part. Tell me your stories, Magic.
So this guy Justin was one of those really hefty and haughty programming types. He had a knack for knowing his way around a computer and any software programming that he could pick up and put his fingers on a keyboard for. He
Now,
got in bad.
not to say you're doing it wrong already.
Okay.
You do not have to make these stories about your particular savior, or any of the saviors, because we're just setting up the world as a whole.
Oh, okay. Well, I already started doing it, so I think I'm just going to keep
Up to
going
you.
with it.
I already
just
told
wrap it in
Ashton
the-
Rabbit you can't get it wrong.
Yeah.
But so go wild, fam.
I'll keep it with some broad stuff to keep going off of for later too. He got in bad a couple of times with the law, but that ended up being his sort of saving grace and getting hired as one of the top cyber warfare operatives for the U.S. government. At the end of this time that I'm talking about for him, he was in the midst of a satellite crashing event that he was fighting against along with his team. And unfortunately, his anonymous opponents were able to sort of compartmentalize their attacks so that it wasn't an all or nothing situation. So if you came down early, but he and his team were able to string up basically as many as they could over the course of the 6 months that they were able to take this on.
So it's just US versus
Somebody.
anonymous.
Yeah.
Somebody. Okay. Well, I won't say you're doing it wrong. Go ahead. Who is number 5?
I am number 5, so I get a card as well, I believe.
Yes.
So now, is this stuff we want to be like writing on the timeline at all, or is this all just set
If
up?
someone would
It's
want
already
to.
there.
Oh,
There you
hey.
go.
Here's.
Somebody is on it. Thank you.
I won't be able to write these. I'll have to be thinking.
HP, your card for setting up our world is a Jack of Spades.
A Jack of Spades, a technological marvel, has just been unveiled and will play a role in what is to come. What problem was it created to solve, and what inherent flaw does it have? The biggest problem with the attacks weren't the target, it was the fact that we don't know who it was. We don't know who we were attacking. We don't know who was attacking us. The world was falling apart and we could not figure it out. So we did, as great technological powers do, we wrote an algorithm for it. And that algorithm started to lift the veil, that anonymous veil, that everyone on the internet seemed to rely so heavily on. All of a sudden, those secret troll accounts weren't secret anymore. All of a sudden, those government actions weren't random malcontents. Technological marvel? We can know. What's the flaw? We can know.
Ooh.
Who is number 4?
I believe that is me, good sir.
Your card is a Queen of Diamonds.
Okay. Where are the diamonds? Queen of Diamonds. Okay. Somebody seeks power uncontainable. What do they desire most? And who are turning to... I can't read. And who are turning to in order to receive it?
Oh, I definitely made a big typo there. What was I trying to say?
What were you trying to say here? So I can try and comprehend it just a smidge more.
Who are they turning to in order to receive it?
Ah, okay.
Somebody seeks power uncontainable. What do they desire most? And who are they turning to in order to receive it?
Interesting. Okay.
We're going to say that's what I meant to say.
No, it makes
Because
sense.
I think that makes the most sense.
It absolutely does. Oof. I think this was someone specific in a hacktivist group who was for the algorithm, but ultimately realized that a lot of their information was being shared, and they didn't take kindly to that, so they were seeking power to overthrow the algorithm, and as such knew they had to seek out a country who had technological advances that could reach in and try and pull this algorithm up from under us, who happened to be someone who is an ally of the US government. So they had to kind of play both sides of, do I let them know that this is happening and stop it, or do they give them that power?
I'm waiting for someone to pick a second country.
I know. It's
Who's
just
gonna be
such
the
a
first?
hot button topic, and I'm not dipping my toes in that.
This is why I was saying make up a different country name.
Oh, that's
Combine
fun.
2 random European countries, and in this world, France and Portugal are now one country, and they're known as
Franchical.
something.
What was
France.
Well,
what
hey,
was that
it's-
fictitious place from the Princess
don't give in to that
Diaries?
pressure. Number 3 is next, and number 3 is proper Proper wants a country name. Proper can pick a country name.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So we're still on that. Who? Okay, I'm gonna ask you. Who is this person who is trying? It's just. Do they have a hacktivist nickname? Do they have a real name? Is it one of the saviors? Is it a random person?
It is a person who was the lead of like the hacktivist group. They went by Not Sam in order to try and confuse people as to who it might be. And they approached fictitious country name here. I'm so bad at coming up with random names on the spot.
You're doing great.
I can see Ashen typing like random country name generator into Google.
Dude, I don't know. I'm like literally looking at things around my room like, God, I don't, man.
You can keep pushing the buck down the line. Eventually, it'll
Yeah,
come
hey,
your
let's
way.
do that because here you go, Proper. This is all for you. You enjoy that.
I have gotten the king of clubs. I can never get this to work right. King of clubs.
Nice.
Let's see. Just so you know, clubs refer to nature, creatures, earth, and weather. The king of clubs. A storm is brewing. What forces it and where does it originate? Excellent. Okay, what I'm going to say, because this feels appropriate for the technological warfare we've got going on here, that there is actually a massive solar storm that astrologers have been trying their best to warn the world about for years. They've seen this coming, they could forecast it, and it is going to hit Earth in the next few weeks. Some people think that it's just, it's just going to pass us by. It's going to miss us entirely. Some people say it's going to be the biggest solar event the world has ever seen. And some people, a small minority of people, believe that the solar storm is going to wipe out all technology on Earth. I think that's an appropriate answer. Unfortunately, I couldn't give you your fake country name there, but
kicking the can down the line.
What if we were actually warring against the sun?
Oh my gosh.
I'm just waiting for an alien twist to this story. I'm so excited.
Master control program, the sun.
Turns out the sun is actually a supercomputer. What?
I mean,
I'm
an
not
algorithm that shines a light on the identities of anyone trying to hide.
Oh my goodness.
Who is number 2?
That's me.
Chrissy, you have a king of diamonds.
Okay. A major corporation controls vast parts of this world. What are they called and what is their trade? Okay. So, well, terms of service and whatnot. So we don't want to use like real companies. So we'll say that there's a company out there called Schmapples. And
I like the word Schmapple, not another fruit. No, Schmapple.
Yeah, we're gonna go with Schmapple. And they are the quintessential high-tech, the best of the best, top of the line tech company that you can find. And they are everywhere. They see everything, they do everything. And they are here for war.
And last but not least, I believe, Kaya, you're number 1?
I am.
Great. Your card is a King of Hearts.
King of Hearts. A prophecy is coming to pass. What does the prophecy say and about whom?
It's perfect.
I love that all of them were like, we've been able to fit them into the like sort of technologically savvy, and then just fucking prophecy.
I mean,
what does the Schmapple prophecy say?
We still
Schmapple a day.
We still haven't identified the other combatant, have we?
We have not.
All right, let's
We
do
have
it.
suggested it might be the sun, but up to you.
Let us do it. It is, in fact, the sun.
Oh my
The
gosh.
Schnapple prophecy says that the whatever is causing this solar storm, it is not a mere force of nature. There is something either within the sun or something outside of our solar system that is, manipulating cosmic forces on a scale beyond anything that we can dream of with our current technology. And people are going to have to take extreme actions in order to even start figuring out what to do about it.
Well, guys, you survived your very first round of Cataclysmal.
Yay!
Yay.
These are the, it should be 6, but because of Magic's Joker pull, this is 7 cards that are going into the rest of the deck. All of the other face cards, including the other Joker, are all going to be put away and will not be used for the rest of this game. And from now on, you're going to be looking at the Tell a Story About column of the appendix, which gives you prompts for the rest of the game. As a quick disclaimer for everyone listening, so how the next phase of this works is over the next 6 rounds, we will all tell stories about any number of saviors by any number of characters, about stories in which a person met or experienced a time with one of the saviors. And we will discover what the saviors are and what they do and what they where they come from in these rounds of storytelling. They do not need to be about the next savior, but the next savior will die after we've done one full round. And their death, it will become really quickly. It's not like Kaya dies after this and never tells a story again, because it is not Kaya who is dying. It is a savior with the name Coral, I believe. If someone could remind me my own rules, who goes first in the first round? Is it the person with the number 1?
I believe so.
HP, you are
HP's
muted.
muted. Yeah,
I thought it started with 2 and went in ascending order, but I could be completely wrong.
Let's double check. Oh, we're going real hard on this.
Oh no,
the player with
picture,
a 1 on
the
their
picture.
savior died.
Yes.
Yeah.
The picture has
The
an
image.
arrow, so it would go
So yeah, we'll
clockwise.
start with player 1. Yeah, and then you get a second turn at the end. Yep. So we're gonna go in the order in the overlay. And Kyer, you're going to start telling a story about the life of any of the saviors and how the Cataclysm begins. And then when we've gone through all 6 of us, you're going to tell a story of how the savior named after your own name, how they die, and how that helps humanity moving forward. It is no small task, and I appreciate all of my players for being here tonight. So let's get started. I have shuffled these cards a fair amount. Give it one last shuffle before we go. Are you ready, Kaya?
I am ready.
Excellent. Your first card is a 3 of diamonds. Please read the prompt for everyone to hear, and let's see how it goes.
3 of diamonds. Tell a story about the time somebody fought with the savior for power or material gain. What did this conflict mean for the savior? How did it change your position in the group?
If you want to begin a little bit like meta, you can say, I'm going to tell a story about you can start narrating it as like there is a little old woman who tells this story, or like there's a big burly man who's telling this story, and that kind of thing, before you get into the story itself.
All right.
But you do you storytell however you want to storytell.
After it's all over, in the husk of a burnt-out house, there is a woman. Can't tell if she's young or old. Her skin is too sun-fried at this point. None of the wrinkles are natural. She leans back, pulls out a cigarette, looks at it, mutters something about the irony of cancers, and says, "Listen, back before all this started, I actually used to work with a guy named Dane. Man, we weren't supposed to be involved in any of this, really. Just keeping our heads down, living our lives. He was, big time at Schmapple. Wasn't part of the factories, but, part of, I think it was operations, logistics, supply chain. I was just the one they sent to get the coffee. But, I remember a day. Bunch of people all in sharp black suits came in through the door. Didn't look at me at all. They went straight through the doors like they had a right to be there. Damnedest thing, the doors actually opened for them. Anyway, it was Dane who came out. Tried to stop them. They were real polite to him. I heard a couple of snatches of whatever offer they were trying to make him. Would have been enough money to turn his life around, I know that. And, all he would have to do is turn over a whole bunch of secrets. He looked at me then. Don't think anybody's ever looked at me like that before. It was a look of sort of borrowing me for a moment just to be a moral compass. I didn't say anything. Just put my head down. Kept pulling out styrofoam coffee cups. Maybe that was the wrong thing to do. He left with him after that. Never came back. You hear stories about him now sometimes, but all that was after. We all used to be just people with jobs, people trying to get by.
Is that what you're ending that story, Kaya?
It is?
Excellent. I forgot to do this for the first round, but we'll do it from now on. The game starts at Monday at midnight, and we'll move forward through the days that lead up to the Cataclysm based on the card that you pull. We will do that for the next player, who, if I'm not mistaken, might be HP.
Yes.
Nope, magic.
Nope.
Maybe?
Whichever way you want to go.
Yes, it is magic. You're next.
Okay.
Your card is 2. It is now 5 a.m.
2 of spades?
2 of spades.
That's the timeline
correct.
change.
Yep. 2 of spades. It is now 5 a.m. Read us the 2 of spades prompt and let us know what's. Begin telling your story whenever you're ready.
Okay, so that one card is serving both purposes.
Correct.
Okay. And here we are. Okay. The savior turns on a group of civilians. How do you stand your ground against the hero? What caused them to suddenly lash out? Okay. In this case, the savior is referring to Justin, right?
Any savior you like.
Any savior. I'm going to keep going with Justin. You know, I remember one day, not long before everything started going downhill, this guy in a suit seemed like he was just on his way to work, normal day. He was all nervous, kind of twitchy, looking over his shoulder constantly. Like in one of those weird movies, like he's out of place, being watched, being chased. I don't know. His briefcase had one latch loose, a couple of papers hanging out of it, like he had sloppily put it together before getting here and getting on his way to wherever he was going. Somebody stopped him and asked for some directions to, I don't even remember where, but accidentally bumped him on the shoulder, and he dropped the suitcase, and the other latch flew open, just exploded with a whole bunch of handwritten papers, which none of us had seen in a while, as well as a small laptop and a couple of pens. And he completely freaked out. He flipped his lid, lost his marbles to the person who bumped into him, and said something to the effect of, "I don't give a damn where you're going. It's all for naught soon." And crowd started gathering around him a bit, and his hair gets all disheveled. His tie's starting to come undone. He's hot. He's sweaty. He's starting to take his jacket off and just yelling at people, some almost prophetic stuff. Some of them snapped that day, and last thing he said before storming off with all his things tucked under his arm, "Just remember Justin told you so."
Excellent.
I think I'll leave it there.
Now it's my turn. This is the scary part. You've all done such phenomenal jobs so far. We'll see how I messed it all up.
No.
Great. I have an 8 of spades. It is now 5 plus 8 is, I know this, 13.
Mm-hmm.
So it is now 1 p.m. on Monday. 8 of spades. Let's see what it says. Someone found a powerful drug or medicine. What problem did it cure? Did the savior treasure this find or fear it? Okay, interesting. I'm gonna go to. I need to like look at all. What are all your names there? We've got. Okay, we are going to a country across the sea from Schmapple headquarters. You see a short man with kind of a growing scraggly beard, since he hasn't gotten the chance to shave in a while, and he has a strong French accent, but he's trying his best to speak English to the other survivors so they can, communicate as a group. And he says, "I knew as a man. His name was Nicolas, and he was a medical professional, a doctor, you might say. And he was doing some spectacular work on, it was nothing to do with technology in the slightest, but the medical cures for all kinds of skin diseases. And he came out with something every couple of years. He would think of a brilliant cure all of a sudden, and then France and Portugal finally came together as one country. It was one of the greatest shipments from New France, and it protected the skin of those from rays beyond anything a sunscreen could do. And Lord knows that when we were all trying to protect ourselves from the solar storms, the ones that should have been just, electrical pulse or something to wipe out the computers, it was so much more than that. But anyone who had the pure gold, I mean, gold was worthless at that time. Whoever had ointment number 1, that was revolutionary. And one day I know I was with Nicholas, and he pulled out his very last bottle of ointment number 1. He held on to that and told me that I should have it. He knew that he would not last long without it, but he wanted to protect those that he was with more than himself. He had created it, and he said the world should have it instead. And that's where he ends his story. Up next, we have Chrissy. Are you ready, Chrissy?
Yeah.
4 of spades.
4 of spades.
It is.
Oh, geez. You found a medical lab with enough supplies to keep the survivors healthy through a rough period. What materials did you find? What were you able to achieve because of this discovery? Let's see. So, I don't know if you guys heard or if you remember the story about, one of the saviors. Their name was Ashley. They were really selfless a lot of the time. And as the sun was just blasting all of this unhealthy insanity, and all of these things were starting to go haywire, and the tech was all shutting down, they ran into hospital after hospital, just grabbing things and bringing them back and giving them away and making sure people had everything that they needed. But one of the wildest things that they found were just small samples of this ointment. And and I've heard other people talk about it, but this ointment, it didn't just help you or protect you, it revitalized you, and it gave you more energy, and it gave you all of this ability to sit with some of the uncomfortability of what was happening. It didn't just help your skin, but it helped your mind. And that was kind of one of the biggest things that the Savior gave us, was the ability to understand that even when things are bad, maybe there's a little bit of good happening, or maybe we can protect ourselves a little bit, if we work together.
Okay.
Next up.
That's Ash. Your card is a 9 of diamonds.
Okay. Diamonds. Where are they? Let's see. You were forced out of house and home because of a major corporation's decision that you were not important. How did a savior stand up to them? What did the corporation do once you had fled? Okay. So this wasn't, I don't know how this wasn't talked about very much, but you know about Schmapple and all the horrible things that they were doing, harboring all of this information and unwilling to share it with everyone. that forced me and my family to flee where we were trying to build a life together. There were, officers going up and down the street and forcing everyone out of their homes because this section of the suburb had been purchased and we were no longer welcome there. They weren't even trying to compensate us to allow us to leave. They were just telling us, you don't own this anymore, you need to go. There was one person, though, who was working, I would say alongside the officers to try and escort people off the premises, but I think they were acting in secret to try and help people instead. Her name was Chrissy. She was the most kind person I could have met within that situation, who told us, look, this is what's happening. We have no power and control over this right now. But here's where you can go. So she led me and my family to safety and security, to a place where at first it seemed a little dank and curious with how dark and mysterious it seemed. But in actuality, that was a place that ended up saving us. So she was silently standing up to this horrific corporation, but was doing so in order to ensure everyone else was okay.
I'm just taking some notes because I'm realizing little issues with how the game works so far, but it's fine. I believe that brings us all the way back around. Am I correct?
It's me and then back.
Oh, okay. Cool. Your card is a 2 of clubs.
The 2 of clubs. The 2 of clubs.
One thing that I know that I kind of put the rule back in very last second, and I'm not sure if it's working the way I'd hoped it would, but basically every time you pick up a card, you add a number of hours to the timeline, which is our as you can see on the screen, it's kind of a general gist of like what the story is thus far. And my idea with that was that these stories would take place on the timeline kind of chronologically, and I do like the way it's going kind of not chronologically, but I think we can try next round to be more specific about the stories happening at those times, but still figuring it out. This is what a playtest is for.
I think it's not going bad so far. Like, none of this
You're
is
doing
getting,
a phenomenal job, y'all.
Yeah.
I'm just saying this is the parts of the rules that I'm like, how do I fix this for next time? Anyway, speaking of which, it is now 4 a.m. on a Tuesday, sometime around the Cataclysm. Feel free to take it away, HP.
Sure. So the 2 of clubs says someone was poisoned. How did it happen, and who did it? Was the savior responsible for their death?
Ooh.
It's about 4 a.m. and the same 2 volunteers have started breakfast for the traveling group as always. And as has been their habit, they chit-chat about what was. It was a bad thing when we figured out what ointment number 1 did afterwards. Yeah, it certainly did hold back the sun. Don't know why it tried killing us. Don't know what's going on there. We might never know. It did protect. Of course it did. You remember the early days. We didn't have to hide underground. We could walk the surface just fine. But there's a thing about cures. It's like all the technology we had, it was supposed to save us until it was the problem. The ointment was the problem. Protected us from the sun. Yeah. Until, well, it changed us. Poisoned us. We might, I figure if we find a tech lab somewhere, we'll, learn. All we heard is what we were told. That ointment, well, it also trapped us down here. Two cooks point around. Chrissy showed us someplace safe. Deep underground. Who knows if we'll be able to go back. Just stir the soup. Why are we having soup for breakfast again?
Soup is all that we can make. Set us down. Okay. This brings us to our very first death round, which is a round entirely helmed by the person who is has the number one savior die. Kaya, the savior who is yet to really be talked about a whole lot, Coral, I believe, right?
Yep.
They are going to die in some way that helps us survive past the cataclysm that is either happening currently or about to happen. You can take it away whenever you like, and you can use a card as inspiration, or you can go with whatever you feel is appropriate.
I think we're just going to do it live. Nobody really knew who Coral was, or even her name, until after it all ended, after it all came out. Because she was the one who went into the Schmapple headquarters and volunteered to be plugged in to see firsthand what the algorithm was seeing. And as she slowly fried away, she spoke, and when she was no longer able to speak, she still recorded her thoughts into the cloud for as long as she possibly could. Here's the thing. You draw sigils of copper wire and silicon and fiberglass all across the world for decades. Eventually, you draw the wrong pattern, or just the right pattern. Eventually, what you've accidentally done is set up a beacon that calls out to things that never should have been. You can't really put it on any one particular person or corporation or country. It's just the course of human history, you know? But, human lust for information, human desire for connection, the human need for more memes on the internet. We have accidentally put something into the heart of the sun that wasn't there. And it's not leaving.
That was a very good and very, I don't want to say it was vague, because that's not what I mean, but it was like very open-ended. I liked that story a lot. So, without further ado, Coral, our very first savior, has died in the early morning of Tuesday around the Cataclysm. We're still a little unsure about what is happening with the sun and what Schmapple's role in all of this will be, but I think it's we're moving forward in a nice way. I like this.
So quick clarification, Proper.
Go for it.
Now that we've like completed a full round, right? And we basically rinse and repeat with different order and that sort of thing. So I think something I misunderstood, most likely because I misread. So we can tell, we are people who have survived telling the stories about these 6 saviors.
Correct.
And the only limitation is really when they start dying off, like no more stories about that person, sort of thing.
We can leave it up to the table, but I would say yes, because then it kind of focuses in on the end of the story.
Okay.
So if you want to tell another story about Coral, that's totally fine. But this is where we're getting into the timeline again. So I didn't explain the timeline super well, and I should have. But basically, in Generational, a story about stories, which is where this is based on, you tell a story of a world. And when you roll a D100 in Generational, you add that number of years to the timeline. So your stories are spread out across hundreds of generations. And so you could tell a story about a king who rose to power in year 400, and the next roll could be 75 years later. That king is now dead. You're telling a story about who took on afterward, or what disaster came about, or that kind of thing. And so I based Cataclysmal off of those kinds of rules, and I wanted to incorporate the timeline back into Cataclysmal. And so the idea was that the Cataclysm happens in the course of the game, but it's not like one specific event, like it happens gradually as a movie might. And so you're telling stories chronologically, and so that's what the timeline is for. It's now 4 a.m. and we ran into a pack of wolves or whatever, and it's now 2 a.m. and we found this old abandoned Schmapple factory. That's what the timeline is for. And then when someone dies, we put that in the timeline as like they died here, and keep telling stories forward for the rest of the Cataclysm and when the successive people died. So I think Kai is fine with it if we just move on without telling stories about Coral. But I want you as players to think, okay, this sacrifice that Coral made gives us important story information about what the rest of the game is going to be like. So use that information in making the other saviors' lives more dangerous or more spectacular or more human. Does that make sense, or did I just poeticize for the last 20 minutes?
That certainly helps.
Okay. We're going to just keep running along. You're telling amazing stories, and I like it anyway. I don't care if you do the rules wrong. I mean, I do somewhere, but like not right now because it's all great. Who has number 2? That's you, Chrissy. You're going to start the round. We're going to go same order again, and continue telling stories about all the rest of this, rest of the surviving saviers. Okay.
So we're telling stories again. I'm not.
It's
dying
the same.
Yet.
Yes, you're not dying yet.
Okay.
But we can tell stories about your savior or anyone else's.
Yeah.
It is currently Tuesday at 4 a.m. Actually, you're going to draw a card in a second anyway. I like someone on the timeline has written Coral's End. It's Tuesday at 4 a.m. Your card actually is a King of Hearts. A king is going to be 24 hours later. So it has now been 24 hours since Coral gave up her life. It is Wednesday at 4 a.m. And you're going to read us the prompt for the King of Hearts.
Yeah. King of Hearts. When a savior explained their role in a prophecy. When a savior explained their role in a prophecy, did you believe it? Did they? All right. Let me do some noodling real quick. This is a good prompt. I like this prompt. I also need to look at the.
That's what the timeline's for.
At the timeline. Thanks for finding the word.
Technically, I think we said the prophecy was something about Schmaplin of the sun, but we did not claim it was a specific person. So it's entirely up to you.
Correct, yeah. So, yeah, I don't know if you guys remember, but right around the time that Coral died and they were plugged into, the algorithm, I got a message, like, and I don't know if it was just me or what, but I've heard multiple stories that this message was spread far and wide and to many people. So maybe you guys got the same message. And we have our, how like the tech now, sometimes it's just right in us rather than like a phone or something that we used to carry around, how it just, messages come into our mind as if, somebody's talking to us rather than an actual machine. But I think right around the time that all happened, I got a message and it was Justin. And when I was listening to it and I heard that same phrase, they had said something along the lines of like, just remember, Justin told you so. It was almost as if Coral had, like, I don't know, like filtered some of that or changed some of that message or that prophecy, or was trying to just tell the world about it. And, I really just wholeheartedly regret not embracing it or taking that information and knowledge and trying to figure out what that meant, putting the puzzle pieces together. Because, if more people, rather than just the ones who saved our lives, maybe if more of us would have stepped up to the plate, we wouldn't have faced what we did,
Next up, I believe, is Ashton.
Ready.
Your card is an 8 of clubs. It is now 12 noon on Wednesday.
8 of clubs. Okay. A drought brought your community to its knees. What did you do to survive when you realized the water wasn't coming back? How did the Savior organize your struggling group? Okay. So we were all huddled in these tunnels, right? You remember this? It was dark and damp for a while. That's the important part I want you to remember. Only for a while. Obviously, we couldn't go out into the sun. It was going to kill us. And then this ointment was kind of preventing us from going outside anyway. So we were all stuck underground. And for a while, it was okay. It was hot and humid down there. Too many bodies squished into too small of a place. But we had access to a well system, so we were okay. There were rations. We knew we were going to be fine for a while. But we weren't. The well system was broken. Something cracked on the surface, and it just started evaporating much faster than anyone could anticipate. And that was hard. We had to start rationing water, something we didn't have plans for years down the line. And this was, what, months? Nicholas really helped with this. Nicholas pulled us together and put together a plan. They went searching underground for more water. Because if there was a well, then there had to be something to supply it, right? And the training that Nicholas had previously, back when he was a teenager, he was able to find some sort of extra water for us, but it took a long time. And we did lose a lot of people. But by the time he came back and was able to find this new source of water for us, we were then able to continue rationing in order to be safe. But at a point where we knew we would be able to survive for a lot longer than a couple more weeks, it turned into months and then years. But gosh, I don't know what we would have done had he not actually found that for us. I don't know how many of us would have survived without that extra source of water.
Excellent. Next up is HP. As HP and I are bickering about if Nicholas has an H. Has it on the overlay, so therefore it does.
It was a different Nicholas.
Oh yes, the many Nikolai. Your card is the Queen of Diamonds.
Queen of Diamonds. You encountered someone wielding dangerous powers. What threat do they pose to the group? Who suffers the most because of their greed?
It is now Thursday, 6 a.m.
Justin told us. Justin told us. Justin told us. Thanks to Carol, Justin told us. Yeah. Now, we're dealing with those suits again. I'd hoped so much that when we got down here, we wouldn't hear from them anymore, but they followed us down. Of course they came with us. Why wouldn't they? They chased us from our homes. Sure, Chrissy helped us, found us a place to stay, but they kept coming. There's something off about these suits. I don't know what. They chase us relentlessly. They hold the power here. Because we're scared of them. And we had no water. And all of us wish that Carol had that styrofoam cup. She was gone then. We were suffering for it, running from it, wondering, is there a way out? Those were not good times. We relied on Nicholas getting us the water, and Chrissy continuing to lead the way. Justin's warning. It kept us going. They gave us hope.
Okay. Who is next?
I am.
Okay, Kaya. Your card is a 4 of Hearts.
4 of Hearts.
It is now 10 a.m.
A savior failed to protect someone due to a terrible secret. Who did you lose because of their cowardice? What happened once the secret was revealed? Oh dear, I think we already know one savior who's a coward, don't we? At that point, it seemed like the world had broken in two, not physically, but a split between the people who'd been chased out of their homes, fighting for survival in the dark, and the people in their towers of concrete and glass and steel, still pretending that going to their jobs had any meaning, still pretending that everybody was going to pull through this somehow. They started putting up these tunnels, makeshift tunnels between the skyscrapers, carefully making sure that both sides were shielded from the sun before knocking through windows and putting these tunnels through, linking up all of these buildings on the 6th floor, 8th floor, 10th floor. It worked for a while. There was a couple of precious days when there was this skyscraper community. People ferrying giant plastic jugs from the water coolers back and forth to the offices that needed them most. But then you got people who were scared. You got people who were a little selfish. Got people who saw the writing on the wall and decided they were going to try to outrun whatever was coming. And if they needed to push other people in their path as sacrificial calves, well, world was going crazy anyway. I'm not gonna swear that I knew. Not even gonna swear that there's any way to know who was responsible. But I saw that long tunnel on 34th. I saw it crack down the middle. I saw one end of that tunnel sliding down, slowly scraping down the side of the building. I saw 10 or 12 gigantic jugs of precious water just rolling out all by themselves. Rolling away into a little hollow in the rubble. Of course I ran to the spot. Water is more precious than anything now that the temperature is rising so much that a glass can evaporate all by itself if you're not careful. It was all gone by the time I got there. But there was an abandoned briefcase on the scene. Had the name Justin stamped in gold letters across that leather. It was empty. Who knows what happened there, really?
Interesting. I don't want to cut you off or anything, but is that the end of your story?
That's the end of my story.
Okay. Speaking of which, again, you're not playing Justin. You're just telling stories about them. But Magic, it's your turn. You have drawn the 4 of clubs.
Four of clubs. Your food supply ran out. What did the savior do to ration or find more food? What sacrifices did the savior make to keep others alive? Okay. You know this Dane guy? Another one of those bigwigs at Schmapple. Few people know he had a little hobby. He kind of went from one pole to the other, and in one part of his day-to-day, he was running whatever he ran up there. Big suit, fancy computers, all that corporate stuff going on. You know where he lived? Over on the outskirts. Tiny little ranch, 3 bedrooms. But he was running experiments outside. He called it his salsa garden. Tiny little biodomes, solar shielding for individual sections of his garden at a time. The genius of it is that they kept enough of a shield to prevent burning, but allow enough sunlight to get through for photosynthesis, of course, but then also generate enough heat for the moisture within to keep cycling itself through. I don't really have all of it right up here. I mean, the guy is a genius, but it worked. That's what they made those out of. And I'm pointing to a massive biodome. Dane's little garden, Dane's little salsa garden experiment just outside his tiny ranch home. Who'd have thunk it? And it was a little short, but I'm probably gonna stop there. Yeah.
Unfortunately, that means me, which is why am I the most nervous about all of this? Okay. Oh, good. I got the King of Clubs. Whoever is looking at the timeline, where does that put us? 24 hours later, so it would be 2
Friday,
p.m.
2
on a
p.m.
Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. King of Clubs, King of Clubs, King of Clubs. Tell us a story about the time your party got caught in a horrific storm. Did someone get lost? What did the savior do to try and keep everyone together? Now, if you don't mind, I'm gonna tell some more specifics about this solar storm that we've been kind of dancing around, and you can feel free to be as specific as you like. It was about a week after the algorithm had really spread around the world, and we had started to feel the effects of the intense radiation we were getting here on Earth. But by Friday, yes, I still somehow remember it was a Friday. It all of a sudden got way worse. I remember I was hiding in one of the darkened towers to get away from the heat and the exposure, and I realized that the folks getting food from one of the last surviving grocery stores were running late. They must have gotten caught up in something, or someone got in their way, and when the heat descended, I knew that they were not going to make it. And so being the guard for our station, I went to one of the saviors, Ashley at the time, and she had already taken some of the ointment and knew that it was detrimental to her health at that point, but that perhaps it could have saved her just long enough to get to these people who were stuck getting us food, and decided to go out into the worst bit of the storm we've seen to date and find them. I remember when she came back, all of their skin was burned in a terrible way, and we did our best to save those people. One of the older members didn't survive, but she was able to get all of the party back. And obviously we had to change our strategy fast because going outside at all was no longer an option. But we survived that day because of the food that they were able to bring back. And I don't know if I'd still be here if they hadn't somehow made it. That's into my story and the end of the second round. Chrissy, it is now your time to tell how the death of the savior, Chrissy, helped us all survive through the Cataclysm. You have just experienced the newest burst in solar radiation that has made going outside at all incredibly impossible by all stretch of the imagination. What did Chrissy do in her final days?
Yeah, we all talk about saviors as if, they're the ones holding the swords and rushing into battle. But sometimes I think the most important parts of the stories are the people who are kind of small, but have a big story inside them. So, I remember hearing about, Chrissy being just kind of average and just, somebody who gets up in the morning and does what they need to do and they do their best, right? But what I think is important to remember when we talk about stories with saviors is that, we talk about Chrissy and her kindness and how she helped people and all of these things, but sometimes it's not necessarily about what they did, but more about what they didn't do, And they just really tried hard to make sure that at the end of the road, they weren't adding to any of the misery that the rest of the world was creating. So, her death wasn't necessarily something spectacular, and it wasn't a burst of energy or a pulling the proverbial plug on everything that was going on. But sometimes those little people, the ones that are kind of the NPCs of the world, they're the most important ones. And I think that's what I appreciate, is that the NPCs and the smaller players and the smaller saviors make everybody else feel just as important. So I think that's what I'll always take away from their story.
Okay. I won't push you to say anything more. We've been playing for about an hour and a half. I'm going to give my players a quick break at the end of round 2 and be back for 4 more rounds. Well, 5. I'll see you all shortly. HP, if you could take us away. Hello and welcome back to TPK Roleplay for our very first playtest of Cataclysmal, a story about saviors. We've been discussing during the break how some of the rules don't make perfect sense, which is fine. That's exactly what I was thinking. But we're going to keep going and see how the story goes. One of my players had this great metaphor of the stories throughout the game being a funnel. We're starting with kind of these wide, open-ended questions. We'll start answering some of the questions more specifically as we move on. My players have done a spectacular job. And I keep saying my players as if I'm not also a player. But I'm going to go first this round, and this is going to be wild. My very first card, sorry, is the Ace of Hearts. Get some jams going. Tell a story about the first time you heard about one of the saviors. Did you understand their importance when you did? How did they prove themselves as important early on in their work? Who do I want to say this about? Okay, we'll do it this way. It's weird to hear that Dane at one time was a suit, or at least worked at Schmapple. It doesn't even sound like a real company at this point, But the fact that Dane did so much in his time that it's wild to think that he was ever part of that awful corporation. Well, real quick, because I need to know this information before I continue. At the very beginning, Dane, did he take the offer from the guys in suits?
I think it was left he walked away with them.
He walked away with them.
Okay. We were up late one night, and Dane told me that he thought that he was responsible for everything that was happening. And to say they were important was a bit of a stretch, but even still, they made certain decisions early on to connect with the beings that we were experiencing hellfire from. He couldn't even talk about Coral because it was one of his decisions that led to her death. And yet, by the time that I met him, I had heard stories about how he had put his life on the line countless times in the days since. And I asked him, what made you change your mind? And I think somewhere in that moment, he realized it too, that he at one point was important enough, that he had secrets and he had knowledge and he had the power. And as soon as he saw what his decision had wrought, he stepped away from the suits and immediately became an enemy. We called them the suits, obviously, but he knew that they were more than that from the day that he stepped away. He angered not man, but some kind of demigod. These creatures that we have been fighting, his actions helped us escape from the wrath of the suits. And sure, we're just staving off destruction, but the fact that he defected so quickly from the suits makes me realize that he is going to be important, or that he was going to be important, I guess, since we all know what he did. And that's where he ends his story. Chrissy, you're next.
Just kidding, I was muted, but yes, go ahead.
This is all taking place very similar time. It is now Friday at 5 p.m. You are a 2 of hearts.
All right. A savior despaired and questioned their ability to save others. What precipitating factor led them to this feeling? How were they convinced of their own importance? You know, we all keep talking about Dane and the suits, but I think the important thing, or one of the important things we keep missing, you know, is well, Ashley, you know, they really stepped outside of themselves a few times with that ointment. And you know, between the experiments they were doing on themselves, you know, trying to make sure that what they were using and what they were doing wouldn't hurt more people, and then finding out that it was, and still continuing to expose themselves, you know? I think that says a lot. But I remember having conversations with them, you know? I remember having conversations, you know, early in the evenings, right as we were trying to kind of end our days, you know? And they'd always just, at the end of whenever they were talking to me, just sounded like a little bit of a question, as if there was something they didn't trust about their own ability, you know? But then, I mean, you guys know the story, you know, the beings, the suits, they all started showing up, and it was no longer just about protecting us from the sun, but protecting us from them, trying to figure out what they were doing, or even just trying to figure out, you know, what was happening. And it was Ash in those moments that, you know, they looked down at their arms, or they looked down at what they were working on with the ointment, and they realized, like, you got to do something, you know? And I remember hearing about one of those times that one of the suits kind of, you know, they do what corporate people do, I guess. Divide and conquer, take over, whatever the case is. And as Ash was trying to leave that day, after all of that testing, all of that stuff all over, they smashed all of those vials, because they knew if we continued to distribute or figure out what was going on, that we might actually be helping them. And they put a stop to it. And I don't know if there's anything more important than stopping that, right? That's it.
Ash, you're up next.
Okay.
It's again been 1 hour. Ace of clubs.
These clubs. Okay.
That's the Cataclysmal title sequence. Just Ace of clubs.
I love it. That's wonderful. Tell a story about the time you and your community had the most perfect day. What about it helped you forget about the horrors you had faced? What hope did it bring to the community? So this day kind of goes down in history, right? Just as everything was starting to hit the fan. There were times where we tried to come together as a group to try and find some brevity in all of it. And even though he stuck to himself a little bit too much and didn't really engage a whole lot with the group, Justin was the one that actually brought us together on this day. He taught us all a game, something to keep our minds off of the horrors of everything. Something to include everyone. It didn't matter what age they were or how comfortable they were with the set of the rules of the game. He confidently guided us through how to play, and encouraged us the whole time. Even when someone flubbed a line or jumped a little too far into this square in the corner, he reassured them that they were doing it right. That you couldn't do it wrong. That play in any form of escape, it didn't matter what it looked like. It was always going to be right. So we all forgot about the suits and the demigods and the horrific powers of the sun being hurled at our planet just for an afternoon. But it was enough to give us hope that if we could find this one moment in time where we could all come together, slapstick and laugh our way through it, that we could face anything and still come out on top.
Okay, HP, you're next.
Sure.
Your card is an 8 of hearts.
8 of hearts. Wrong way. That
It
way.
has now been 8 hours since we last heard a story. Since the very meta game that Magic was teaching others. It is Saturday at, I believe that would be 2 a.m. Nope, that is 12 midnight. That's how time works. Nope, it's not how time works. It is 2 a.m.
You shared your faith with one of the saviors. What is it that they believe? Does your faith give them strength?
Went in with the tough topics, didn't I?
Oh, we'll do it this way. That refrain Justin told you. We had to hold on to something, and so we did. I mean, I don't think Justin was any more special than anyone else, really, but kind of was, by definition. It was his warning. And the weird thing was, he was with us the entire way. Sure, they tell stories about the day that he ranted and raved, but he mellowed out. Taught us how to play a game. Afterwards, I told him, you know, what you said, your warning, it's what saved me. It's what made me follow. It's what made me know that there was a way out. A way away. Gave me something to believe in again. Because, oh, damn it does something to a person when the sun tries to kill you. And you need something to smile about. Does my faith give him strength? Well, Justin cried that night. Because it did matter.
Excellent. Next up, we have Kaya. Your card is a 5 of clubs.
5 of clubs. Something attacked the community from the sky. How did you take cover from the damage? How did the savior fend off the attackers? You know, we all knew Nicholas mostly as the creator of ointment number 1. Oh, it broke his heart when he figured out what that ointment was doing to people. He spent a couple days, couple sleepless, foodless days cooped up in what passed for a lab. It was mostly just the area that people knew not to go bother him in, trying to make ointment number 2, trying to make something better. But that just meant that he was the only one there when a portion of the earth just caved in over us, so right over our heads. those who saw it said that it looked like a suit, but not, not a person wearing a suit. It looked like just a set of clothing flapping around by itself. It sort of half flapped, half fell down into the chasm that had been opened up. And it touched down near Dr. Nicholas. And when it touched down, it sort of grew, sort of ballooned out. Hands and feet and a nondescript face with sunglasses. Well, all I can say is, that doctor's known for his, quick initiative. He didn't waste any time trying to develop ointment number 1 back at the start of all this, and he didn't waste time trying to talk, so he just picked up the vial that he'd just been experimenting in and tossed it right into that suit's face. Face burned away immediately, obviously. But, that set of clothing just up and flapped right up again, flapped right out of there. Everybody didn't really want to get too close to that area where the earth had caved in and the sunlight was flooding through, but a couple of the daring young ones say they went and had a peek up. Saw a flock of those things circling overhead, just waiting. That's all I gotta say.
Up next, we have Magic. Your card is a 6 of clubs.
Remembering to unmute myself. Okay, 6 of clubs. A mother creature interferes with your group. What did you do to disturb it? How does the savior deal with the threat? Okay. I need to look at our notes about some people. Sorry, I'm going to take a second. Is that okay?
This is all we're like, what the fuck just happened in the last 3 hours?
All right.
I also really do appreciate that we still haven't figured out what exactly ointment number 1 was doing to people.
Right.
We just know that it's bad.
We know that it's bad. Yep. Okay. Mother creature interferes with your group. In the moment, I'm kind of locking up, so I'm going to stick with.
If we want to cheat, we can give you a different card.
Can we cheat?
Yeah.
I'm having massive brain freeze on this. Sorry.
I'm gonna put it at the
You
end.
can also ask for help. We did that during Generational. That was part
Oh,
of
let's
the-
do that. Let's do that instead. Yes, to try to stick to the spirit of the game as much as possible. So what I'm stuck on is an idea of a creature, because all we have so far is basically the saviors and the other humans around us, and whatever these demigod things are. Do we have
So
ideas
can you
for
read
like
us the prompt one more time?
Yeah.
Tell us a story about.
Tell us a story about a mother creature interferes with your group. What did you do to disturb it? And how did the savior deal with the threat? I guess I'm kind of reading that as the mother creature is the threat. I did something to disturb it and make it a threat, and the savior hops in and sort of intervenes somehow.
Any suggestions from the table?
I mean, we did just talk about what felt like lesser pantsuit related demigods. So you could definitely, as those were being eviscerated with ointment number 2, discuss how the mother of said pantsuit demigods would definitely be pissed that she lost all of her children.
I'm
I
like
mean, I would
both
come for an
pleased and
entire
angry that at some point we went from they are just called suits because they wear suits to no, the creature is a suit. We have memed too close to the sun, y'all.
And that's the problem.
It's perfect.
That is literally the problem.
That's literally what just ended the world.
There you go.
So that's a good answer. Why don't you try to tell us what is the mother instinct of these suit/sun beings?
Something's helping them or controlling them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like a mother brain.
I'm not telling you
Mother
what to say.
metaphorically.
The mother could literally be the sun. I'm not sure if it is, but
Well,
it could be.
Yeah, but it is also like erring on the side
Is it
of
the
like
chicken coop, not the mother hen? I see.
right. Yeah, so it's a mother creature. It doesn't have to be the mother creature.
Yes.
That helps.
You could also just say that you were attacked by a giant wild boar mom. Like, or if you want to go real crazy, we're all tunneling under the ground. Maybe we've disturbed a
Ooh.
nest of some evil entity.
Right. I think I'm gonna go with something like this. I was there the time it was Ashley, right? That threw the vial into a suit's face and the whole thing happened.
It was
That was
Nicholas.
Nicholas.
Okay. It was
because
Ash
it was
telling that
his
story. I think.
experimental
Yeah.
liquid.
Okay. So I was there the day Nicholas made this discovery after throwing a vial in someone's face, in one of the suit's faces. Seeing that suit just sort of flap away in the breeze was probably one of the creepiest things I've ever seen, but oddly satisfying at the same time. But what happened next was probably the only thing that could have topped it. Was another handful of suits nearby went into this just crazy rage and burst into flames, but not in the same sort of melting away the creature fashion that one suit did. It was more like an activation of something primal. And 3 of them come together in this firestorm in the shape of a human and ran right at all of us. Nicholas seemed a little taken aback by what he had just seen. I think it had to be the first time he'd seen it. Certainly the first time for me. Definitely didn't know anything like that was coming. Lucky for us, he had another couple vials and basically just started lobbing them at this thing like hand grenades. The crazy thing is, though, all that did was slow it down. It was like those 3 things combining themselves to each other, amped up whatever they are tenfold instead of just 3. We got away. Me and a couple other civilians. I can't say I've seen Nicholas ever since, and I don't know what happened to him after that. We all just kind of scattered. But holy shit, they can combine themselves. That's where I'll end my story.
I've suddenly had like
Good.
big brain moments during that, so I think I'm in a good place to tell the death of Nicholas,
Ooh.
which sounds like a very sad Christmas story. So the enragement of a mother suit, demigod, sun creature, whatever you want to call them, was evidently seen as an act of war. And the suit spread across the world and razed the planet to the ground. The world was burning, and they had spread themselves as the owners and the mysterious benefactors of the world's largest corporation. Schmapple had offices and plants on every continent and in every country. And when they were provoked on that day, they took it upon themselves to spread fire across the globe. It's really awful to see the world you know turn to ash. And to this day, the survivors still struggle with starting a fire just for warmth or for food. And in that showdown with one of the largest of the demigods that we'd seen to date, Nicholas unveiled the greatest weapon he had against them, and was able to fill the ocean with a self-copying version of ointment number 2, and it became like a poison to the rest of us for quite a long time. But as soon as it entered the water cycle, it started to defend us from the suits. However, we watch as Nicholas collapses in this last moment of trying to save the others, as he is overtaken with a flow of too much of ointment number 2, and his body burns up as a reaction to ointment number 1. And as his body dissipates and enters the sea that he is letting the rest of this reactant into, we watch as Nicholas disappears. I think that's where we're going to end, as with Nicholas's round. Which means we'll switch our soundtrack and move on to round number 4. Who is number 4?
That would be me.
Hello, Ashley.
Hello.
Your card is the 3 of spades.
Okay. Space. Tell a story about the time you found defunct technology that you were able to use to your advantage. What did you find, and how was it used? What sentimental memory did the Savior share with you over it? So things were really heating up on the surface. The sun blasting the planet in a way that it shouldn't have, at least not for another 5 billion years. God only knows. But Dane had an idea. Using the technology that he gained from his salsa farm, salsa garden.
I think at one point it had been a salsa garden.
Had been created food for everyone. Still known
Expanded
to all as
from
the
there as
yeah.
a salsa garden.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, good
Still
to know. Good to know.
100% named the salsa garden. Everyone knew exactly what it was and the location of it. But he was able to take that technology and amplify it with a certain kind of shield that was found. Someone was out scavenging for food, for anything that can try and help us down in the tunnels, in the underground. And in one of the raised skyscrapers, there was hidden technology from Schmapple, where they were very obviously in cahoots with the demigods, with the suits, and were being warned how to protect themselves. They weren't given precise instructions on how to do so. There were things lost in translation. So the technology that was there didn't immediately work upon inspection. And even when it was taken back to the salsa garden, as a place that it felt the most important to try and expand upon it, it didn't immediately work. But Dane had an idea. He found a way to use it to expand the protection outside of these gardens, these places where we were growing all of our food, to include the surrounding area. So we could go outside and be safe and breathe in fresh air. There was grass that grew in this area. It was only in this very small portion that surrounded these small areas. There was a time that once we got it running, Dane wanted to show me how it worked. So he took me out to the control panel just outside, and it was an odd suggestion at the time, but in the moment it made sense. He suggested that we take off our shoes so that we could walk through the grass, because I don't think anyone had experienced that in a long time. Just being outside and enjoying this small bit of nature, no matter how insignificant those blades of grass were, they were small beacons of hope to us. So him breaching that threshold out into this secure area and having like a sense memory from childhood of, oh, it's grass, you walk on this with your feet, you don't walk on this with your shoes, you're gonna trample the grass. It was just a back of the mind thing, but it was something that we all adopted eventually. So to be the first person to witness that meant a lot. It's the end of my story.
Except we have HP. Your card is a 7 of spades.
Spades. You found copies of yourself and everyone else in your village. What did the saviors do with their clone? What did everyone else do?
I enjoy that a lot of them are working very well, and then I just come in with a curveball.
Okay, 11 p.m. Find copies. It seemed like everything was changing so quickly. The suits chased us, fought us. We found a way to fight them. Nicholas gave us a way to win, even. Just had to wait for it to take effect. As long as it works. And it will. I know it will. I know it'll work. But Well, seems like Schnapple and the suits had even more in mind. The algorithm that revealed everyone, I don't know if it recorded us or what it did, but these empty suits, their nondescript faces. We ran into a village where, oh, they were definitely the suits. They weren't so nondescript anymore. They looked like people we knew, we had known. They had taken on these faces. And as we watched, it was like they were trying to live little robotic versions of our lives. They were unnerving. Everything went wrong so quickly. But Ashley was there. And, well, we really didn't know that she had it in her. But when we saw it was the suits copying us, I think the phrase was, "Ah, hell no." It got ugly. But at the end of the day, I think we came out ahead. Never saw someone use a fire hose that way before. Let's just say that Nicholas's ointment in the water, it's definitely working.
Moving on, Kaya, you're next.
All right.
How do
hit me
you
with
feel
it.
about the Six of Hearts?
Six of Hearts. A savior shares a dirty secret with you. Did you bond over it? What secret did you share? Funny thing. When somebody goes and turns the oceans into biological poison, well, water was already scarce. Now water became something that you kill people over. It was around 5 in the morning. Nobody else around. I remember I was just putting together a couple of sticks into something small and throwable for the next time we ran across something we wanted to chuck a piece of fire at. Justin came up to me. I didn't realize anybody else was still awake. He said he wanted to show me something. Well, in the before times, this is not the sort of invitation you take casually if you're somebody who lives alone in a big city, but how could things go any worse now? Thing is, though, he led me to a little, I don't even want to call it a shack, it was just a little safe space that he had made in the rubble. Lined with gallons and gallons of giant plastic water jugs, you know, the kind you get from, the kind you see in any office building, giant upside-down water dispensers. No idea where he got them from. Said that he wanted to make sure if something happened to him, somebody would know about this. So I remembered. Remembered where the place was, remembered how to get there. Kept a keen eye for a couple of days and weeks and months afterwards, after it was all over. Just making sure that nobody else was going to come and destroy this hoard of riches. No idea why he chose me, of all people. Maybe I was just the only one who was awake at that time, but man, that water saved a lot more people than he probably ever imagined. That's all.
Next up, we have magic. Your card is a 4 of diamonds.
4 of diamonds. Sorry, I'm getting all into it. I gotta turn the music back down again so I can hear myself think. 4 of diamonds. Greed to survive overtook the group, and a fragile harmony was broken. What incident forced your group to work together again? How did the savior rise to a position of leader because of it? Okay. You know, Justin's story is rife with conflict. It was almost at times like you didn't really know what side he was on. One time he'd be helping somebody, another time he'd be helping the suits. I mean, hell, he worked for him too. But at one point, when a solution to our problems never really seemed available, was the first time I heard the second part of his warning. And I mean, at this point, he was full on going crazy. But he just kept saying, remember, Justin told you so. Keep the sun behind. And I mean, this was revolutionary for some of the more ingenuitive, is that a word? Engineering minds? I'm going to say that, the more engineering minds. I mean, they came up with all these crazy theories of, follow the horizon, bikes constantly running, small towns on floating platforms that'll constantly follow the horizon, all this crazy stuff. But you know what? If nothing else, for a moment it stopped all the infighting over water and food and had us thinking about solutions again for once. And damn if we didn't come up with some cool ideas. I'm gonna end there.
I'm up next, I do believe. My card is a 10 of hearts. What time is it?
11:30.
No, sorry, not that time.
IRL time?
So it would be 7 p.m. It had been almost a whole day since Ashley had run into... Oh, I need to read off the thing. Sorry about that. Tell a story about the time a savior told you about their family. Are they still alive? How do they hold their family in their heart? It had been about a day since Ashley had run into the clones of her family and of her and of all the people that she cared about. And I could tell that it was taking its toll on her. She confided in me that while she was busy taking down the suit's stock of clones, basically, she had come across one of her daughter that she had lost in the early days of the sun's radiation. And seeing that hurt as much to see that they were taking her likeness as they were, as it was that she and her were no longer together. And she pulls out from her neck a small necklace, and on it is, of all things, a piece of macaroni, which feels so absurd. And it's like, I mean, we'd gone through most of the stores of any pasta we could find in the days since, but seeing that was shocking, to say the least. And she told me that it was a gift that her daughter had given her many years ago when she was in basically preschool. And despite the fact that it was literally a piece of old macaroni on a chain, she treasured that. I'm shocked that she was able to keep a piece of dry pasta alive during the Cataclysm, but the look in her eye when she pulled out that weird ass necklace told me all I needed to know, and I felt really bad for her having seen a vision of the girl that she had lost. And I understood why in the past day she'd been struggling to make it through the hours. I held her close, and I didn't have a good thing to say at that time, because what do you say? But I thanked her for telling me, because I believe that telling these stories is how we remember people best. That's the end of that story. Chrissy, you're next. You ready?
Yes.
You are the Ace of Spade.
I love that. That's great.
It's also a very pretty card.
Tell a story about the time when the Savior declared peace between warring factions. What did the Savior do to end the dispute? How did the two groups reconcile? Whew. Oh no. Thanks, I hate it.
You can ask for suggestions. We can skip it if we need to.
No, we're not.
It doesn't also have to be like we've set up the suits versus the humans, but it could always be two warring groups of people. So
I'd like to hear from my table mates what they would think, or some ideas from them. What are you guys thinking?
My mind immediately went to I don't think we've really explicitly identified this anonymous hacker group, have we? We've identified suits versus humans, but I think that's kind of an adjacent thing.
That's cool.
Or it could be a time to tie up the suits and reach the end of the suit saga.
I mean, my mind is just immediately going to like pinstripe suits versus pantsuits. So don't.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's when.
I love that we are
pinstripes joined us.
We are
Actually,
unicycling
yeah.
along
My
the
goodness.
gray area between meme and like seriousness.
But I'm
The
gonna
line
kinda,
is so fine.
Love it.
if Kaya and HP will allow it, I'm gonna kind of rip off that a little bit, because I kind of liked that though. Not quite, but kind of. Fully. So
I didn't love your idea, but you know
I
what?
love the idea, but I'm not gonna rip it off fully. Is what I'm
I'm
word
joking.
that,
Don't
so.
worry.
Yeah. So I know that we all keep sitting around and talking about how bad these suits are, but I mean, I don't know. I've had a handful of times where, I mean, more than a handful actually, as I was trying to survive and do all of these things, where it was almost like some of those suits still held on to a little bit of humanity. Like maybe they hadn't became these corporate shills that we thought, or these just absent beings just to bring about this destruction, you know? And I don't know, I remember, you know, sitting with some people and trying to survive and having a suit be that person or that being that brought us a dinner or a meal, or brought us all, you know, water, whatever we needed to kind of keep it going. And we can talk bad all we want about the technology and the war and everything, but there's always the outliers. There's always the ones who are willing to go outside of. And I really think Justin was that savior who was willing to step outside of everything we knew and just try to connect, try to talk to them, try to form some sort of bond or connection somewhere to make them realize that they can be more than what they are. It's one of the things I respected the most about it. I mean, it didn't have to be what it was, you know? We get into kind of just this idea of this is what it is and we're at war. But, you know, there's always a chance for peace sometimes. That's it.
We have made it back around to you, Ashen Rabbit, I believe. If you are ready to tell us about, I don't want to say demise, but Ashley's demise.
Sure. This would have come shortly after the revelation that some of these suits still held on to some of their humanity.
I do need to ask the table a question here.
Yes.
Were the suits human at one point? Or are they otherworldly?
We could adopt it.
Why not both?
Well, because we were saying they have humanity. So were they humans?
I think
or
it
only
was
some of them humans.
Human empathizers, perhaps?
Yeah, well, because they were using the algorithm to pull that information about people and try and pretend to be them, right?
Okay, I like where this is going.
So this is going to be a weird... So Kaya made a great reference in chat, but my brain went immediately to Cylons, but also to the like Cybermen idea in Doctor Who, of like there's those couple of episodes where the Cybermen hold on to like whatever was left of, not necessarily all human, like they're definitely still not it. That's where my brain was going, like probably not, but they're like sentient enough to be like, we got to do something different.
Okay, I sidetracked us. I apologize.
That's all right.
Continue going where you were, Ash.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, I think this would still track. Shortly after the revelation that the suits, harboring their humanity based on the information that they had taken and being sympathizers to the cause, really just wanted to find a place to fit in. They weren't from one side or the other. They originated from one side, but they didn't belong anymore because they had taken on the likenesses and the traits and flaws of the people that they were trying to pretend to be. And Ashley couldn't get past the fact that she saw her daughter, that this thing, whatever it was still a good enough likeness to her. So she would creep out every once in a while to go and visit them, and started to call them by her daughter's name, and eventually they responded to that. But in doing so, the trek back and forth still exposed her to the dangerous sunlight that was out there, and her being not so much a proponent of ointment number one, but someone who had ultimately given in to the side effects of it, it was becoming more of a detriment than something that could help. And eventually, one day, she left to go and visit the daughter and never came back.
Okay. Who is number 5? Lovely Dane. HP, I've just seen your meme and TPK show discussions, and I'm disappointed. We are making fairly good time. We have 2 more rounds before we wrap up. Let's see how quickly we can get through this. You were first, HP.
Yep.
7 of Hearts.
7 hearts. Gotta pull my thing back up. 7 of Hearts. A savior saved your child. What tragedy put them in this situation? What daring rescue did they accomplish to save them? Ah. Well. Just an hour after Ashley's death. Ashley's death changed something in the relationship between the suits and us. Yeah, some of them were helping. Some of them took on some humanity. Some of them went a bit far. Ashley's death showed us that. We all got worried. We all looked for our loved ones. We all looked for our kids. All who remained. In the search, we ran into Dane with the suits, trying to explain something to them, pointing out a flower in his hand, trying to bridge some gap. I mean, he save a child by showing him a flower? No, that doesn't make any sense at all. It's almost like I forgot the prompt completely. But he did reinforce their humanity. Those little glimmers they were showing. I guess in a way it did save us.
Excellent. Up next, we have Kaya.
All right.
Your card is the 6 of Spades.
The 6 of Spades. You found a vehicle that had been abandoned. What was wrong with it? How did the savior fix it? At this point, most of the people were either still deep underground or huddling in one of the new biodomes that was going up. First one, of course, was Dane's salsa garden, but others were picking up on the same technology that was making open air safe to be in again. New ones were being built, but they were dotted all over. And sometimes it would be a trek of days or weeks to get from one little settlement of people to another. It's not a trek that most can survive. Nobody was willing to touch the ointments anymore, at least nobody who still wanted to live. Funny thing though, it was one of the suits, one of the We call them the good ones, but it's not really a thing that we can say good or bad, but it was one of the suits that led Dane to an amusement park. Old and rickety by now. But Dane saw the potential there. There was a big old busted roller coaster. Well, you don't become the head of supply chain for a place like Schmapple without knowing a little bit, at least, about moving things from where they are to where they need to get. They had to abandon the track that was already there, but, you know, wrench some of that bulletproof backing off of some of those tunnels, salvage some of those roller coaster carts with aeronautic grade safety harnesses. You can get yourself a working caravan or two. A couple of the most foolhardy young lads volunteered to go take it out for a spin, see if they could find anybody else, see if that little thread of smoke on the horizon was people or just wreckage. Well, they came back the next day with 44 new people, all willing to help start expanding the boundaries of this one little protected Garden of Eden. I think that's when we all started turning a corner. When we all remembered that the other people out there, they weren't just competition. We needed to pull together and become more than the sum of our parts. There we have it.
Okay, up next is you, Magic. Your card is a 5 of spades.
5 of spades. And at this point, Dane and Justin are the saviors alive, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Five of spades, yes?
Correct.
Tell a story about the time you stumble across a secret research facility. What do you discover about the world because of your time spent here? What connection to the research does a savior have, or those who funded it? Okay. You know, one of those fights broke out. You know, once they found out about the ointment working directly against them. Scarcity didn't matter anymore. People just started chucking it away like it was pennies. As long as it hit one of them. Or more if they were lucky. And one of these fights caused a little explosion across the street from Schmapple headquarters. At first, what I saw was a few jugs of water, so I didn't hesitate at all to hop in there and try to grab one or two if I could, but I quickly realized that there was a smaller bit of research happening on a few tables across this room. I snatched one of those pieces of paper, and I've had it on me ever since. As the storyteller, I'm holding it up. Jumping onto third person for a second, this paper has a couple of little schematics and like handwritten notes and scribbles and diagrams. This is all Greek to me, except for right here at the end. Signed off, Supervisor Dane. Employee number 256, Justin. Well, you know who this is? There's a little Polaroid style picture paper clipped to the corner. And in the handwriting matching Justin's signature. Thank you, Coral. I think I'll stop it there.
Okay. I'm next, aren't I? 10 of clubs. Tell a story about the time you found natural cover from the elements. What did your group do with the protection? What did the Savior do with this new resource? With the turn in some of the soldiers of the suit side in understanding and reconciling with the humans, it felt like we had a upper hand in this semi-war, and yet evidently the powers that be were not happy. And sure, the newly sort of poisonous water was working its way through the ranks of the demigod angel-like beings, but it was quickly dissipating. And so we needed to find a new strategy to keep ourselves alive, especially when the solar radiation increased once again and made going outside of any kind impossible once again. And so using the biodomes that we'd created, we had finally come together to create a city of a sort. It was protected, and it became a haven for anyone that we could find out in the wastes to come back and be protected in our new city. It didn't even have a name at that point, but it quickly became a shelter from a world that was trying so hard to get rid of us. And thankfully, while we were building a stronger defense, we found an underground chamber like one that we had traveled in before. I remember when the well dried up, we thought that we could never find fresh water again, and yet we happened to have landed on just the right spot. That there was not only water, but a small patch of untapped oil. And someone brought up the idea of fighting fire with fire. I wasn't totally sure on the plan, but we had fuel and we had water in our new environment. And I think it was Justin who was the first person to find a solution. that we decided that instead of staying down here and hiding, we needed to take the offensive and use what we had, the materials, the mechanics, the propulsion, to fight back in some way. And it was that reserve of oil and water that we found in our new home that we decided we needed to name this city. And as soon as we had claimed back a spot on this earth, it would be our new home. I'm ending it there, because I can't think of a good name for it, so I know someone will instead.
I know
Next
someone
up is-
who's really good at names that's coming up next.
You're welcome. Should have named the city.
Welcome to Blue Nork. Chrissy, your card is a 3 of hearts.
3 of hearts. A savior lost a loved one. Why were they special to the savior? What did the community do as a way to remember them? This is when I wish HP would have put his notes in. Dang it. You know, we've all lost a lot of people through all of this. We've lost friends, neighbors, co-workers. But I don't know. It's in these late hours, you know, when you really start to think about the people you miss the most. I think about, you know, my mom and my dad. And then I think about, you know, in these wee hours sitting with Justin and hearing about who he lost. And thinking about how important his family was to him, you know? And there were all these important parts of their story where, you know, they had these kind of like runes or schematics or these ways to really end all this, possibly to really get to the end and make it so the rest of us could do better. So as a way to kind of show our gratitude and, you know, show everything that we appreciated, we started looking at losing people during this in a different way, you know? We all started slowing down with death a little bit, appreciating the moments we have, taking care of the bodies if we had them, making sure we definitely took the time to share stories, to remind everybody how important those stories continue to go. And I think it's in those moments when I think about the character of some of these saviors. We think about the people they lost and how we lost them. So I think in their deaths, it will be those moments that we just slow down and appreciate, honor it, tell the stories. And that's it. And you're lucky I didn't name the city, because I was definitely going to name it Schmooisiana.
That's so good. Oh, you're muted proper.
Okie doke, Ash, you are next.
Sick.
Oh no. You have the
Oh.
red Joker.
Oh, dip. All right. Oh, no. So sad. Okay. Tell a story about the time the next savior dies in shame immediately. Ooh, I have to explain how they die. Oh, shoot. So this is Dane, right? Oh my god. Oh, okay.
So is this instead of Dane player describing Dane's
Wow.
death? Wow, okay.
Oh, I'm so
That's
sorry to take that
powerful.
from you. Oh my
Yeah.
god.
All right.
That's painful.
Just kill me, Ashen. Just kill me.
No.
Remember, it's in shame.
In shame. Okay.
Shame.
Yeah.
This is basically like the 2 Joker cards are like the worst cards to start the game with. And because you add them to your deck, you also get a really shitty, like, middle of the game thing too.
Damn. All right. So we all knew Dane. We all knew the loose threads that he had tied up from working directly with Schmapple, from realizing that things were wrong and that he needed to leave, to helping to build a society, to help build the city of New Haven. None of us really, what am I saying? None of us really suspected Dane of this. But he seemed to still have threads that were not tied up. He still had a connection to the suits and to the demigods. There was always a bit of curiosity. At least, that's what we've heard. He decided to leave us and join them and try to join them. Tried to find a way to work together to become something bigger. And I think he did. A weird mishmash of a clone and him combined into one. Some say they still see him out there, but it's not really him. That we still don't know. That is the end of Dane.
And I'm sorry, HP. That is the end of Dane. We'll find a way to wrap your story up later on. Don't you worry. This is the 6th and final life round, as I call it in the game. We're starting with you, Magic. And your card is the Jack of Spades.
Jack of Spades. Oh, man. Okay. I'm really liking how much we've been able to tie stuff together. This is cool. Okay, tell a story about a time a savior harnessed the power of a technological marvel. What were they able to do with it? What danger did it bring to you and the people you love? Okay.
Now, see, we discussed whether it's appropriate to tell stories about saviors that have since died. That's where the funnel approach came from, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But this might be a good reasoning to say that you can talk about them with the past ones, if
Sure.
you wanted to. If not, this round is basically going to be just Justin Central.
So, yeah, in the interest of not making it so central on just one savior, but mixing it with one savior is still alive in the timeline now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna try to mix the two. I did on the last round as well, but I'm gonna try to mix the two. You know, the science behind the whole uplink thing, I think, got really overlooked. I mean, really, the whole thing's mind-boggling. We needed humans to put their consciousness into this machine in order to make the blanket work. What? Right? Like, come on, you can't think through that whole technological marvel and not just. And then how poetic is it? Justin as the engineer and his lover, Coral, being the uplink to end the sequence in the algorithm. I can't think of a better story for this whole thing. And you know what's crazy about it is that this algorithm then, at the time of that uplink, triggers all of these events in just the right order, sequence, and timing that we end up with a redemption arc for a traitor. I was there when he took on the final keystrokes at his little portable station on the run from the rest of the suits. And the last thing he said to me at that moment was, "Remember, Justin told you so. Put the sun behind the blanket." It haunts me to this day.
It haunts me too, Magic, because I don't know what it means.
That's what a prophecy's for.
You know, I'm working toward an idea for
valid.
Justin's death, and we'll see what happens in between now and then to sort of formulate what happens.
That of course does mean it's me next. So let's see how this goes. I have the Ace of Diamonds. Tell a story about the time a savior gifted you one of their prized possessions. What did it mean to them? What does it mean to you? Let's see. Now I'm stuck. Any suggestions from the table?
I missed half of the prompt. Would you mind rereading it?
Do not mind reading it again. Tell a story about the time a savior gifted you one of their prized possessions. What did it mean to them, and what does it mean to you?
I mean, there was that macaroni necklace.
Oh,
There was that.
yes.
How did Ashley die again?
She left to go and find her clone daughter.
Okay, that works. I like that. But I'll tie it together. It seemed like at the time Justin knew more about his place in all of this than I knew what to do with. he seemed to understand more than anyone I'd seen before, and yet he knew that if we were to make it out of this alive, we needed to hold on to the reasons we had to keep going. Before she had left our group, when we had all found safety in New Haven, Ashley had left behind her necklace, and she had told me the story about that necklace just, hours, days before. But Justin gave it to me as he was heading out, because he wanted to pass down that story and that hope, that love that stood out beyond a physical human being, but in the stories that we tell one another. And so in that moment, he gave me quite a lot of hope. It had meant that he had passed on a story of someone else who had meant something special to this town. And I could tell that what he was doing at this point was doing it for something that he loved. And beyond individuals, those who have passed and those who are still alive, he was saving us all because we had become a family of survivors. Got a little lost in translation, but I think that's the end of my story. Let's move on to Chrissy then. Your card, Chrissy, is a Queen of Spades.
Tell a story about the time you were caught in the crossfire of a dangerous fight. How does the Savior keep you safe? And who doesn't make it? We haven't really had any saviors. Let's see. Well, I have a pretty vivid memory, and sometimes I think I don't remember the details correct, but it was early one morning, and it was, we were in the thick of everything. It was when the world felt like chaos and everything felt heavy, and it was dangerous to even be out and about. And I can remember, in those moments before Dane went, and ultimately what I witnessed is him kind of, well, we don't need to talk about that, but before that, just a little bit, we were there, and we were trying to protect people together. We were trying really hard, and it was one of those moments where it was either me or him. And I mean, he chose himself. He saved my life. But then when you think about how the story ends, you gotta wonder, was it done because he was just trying to get closer? Was he trying to, what was the actual reason he saved me? Because we know he doesn't make it. But why? Sometimes that's just a question I ask myself a lot. I mean, it isn't necessarily that people are bad or good, I don't think. But why are they willing to do things like that, right? I don't know. Just something I think about a lot in that moment. Because, I mean, it could have been me dead. But here I am, sitting around this fire, telling stories with you. And that's it.
Okay, Ashton Rabbit, you're next. You have the 10 of diamonds.
Ooh. 10 of diamonds, you say. Okay.
I do say.
You do. Tell a story about the time you stumbled upon riches of valuable resources. Was this a blessing or a curse? How did the savior guide your community in its presence? Ooh.
You've set up like a nice story that there's like a lot of very valuable resources at this point.
Yeah. What other new resource could there be? I'm gonna poll the group here. What other fun resources could be found? We've got water, we've got fuel, we've got the biodomes creating food.
Copper
Ooh.
Or silicone.
and silicone, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I end up back relying on, knowledge in books, a documented history of.
True.
Okay.
Someone's
could
always got
be-
a journal.
It could be a journal. It could be, files from Schmapple.
Heckin' schmapple.
It could be the evil sun god's evil plans.
Okay.
We're also all very, very close to the end of Justin's story, which means we're very close to the end of the Cataclysm. So if you want to really funnel it in now, now's your chance.
Okay. Yes, I think this is a good thing. Yes, brain. Thank you, brain.
Thank you, brain.
Thank you, brain. Way to go. So we were out on a scouting mission, right? Still looking for more things to bring back to New Haven and to bring and shuttle off to other communities we had found out in the wild. Of course, we were finding more sources of water, which is great. We need that indefinitely, especially with how the sun burned so much away. All the groundwater became far more than necessary. It was, well, to be redundant, vital. It wasn't until we stumbled through what just looked like a nondescript building, kind of on the outskirts of the city. No one ever really knew what it was. You'd see cars drive in and out of this place in the before times. But it was this large, massive building surrounded by a great deal of land and fences around that, so you couldn't ever really see what was going on in there. And of course, there weren't signs anywhere save for the road signs, which now we could barely remember what the names were. But we made our way over there, and it was mostly a facade that led deep down underground to secret research facilities, as far as we could tell, from Schmapple and from this hacking group. There were stickers of Not Sam all over the place. And of course, this being a research facility, there were a lot of great materials here. A lot of bunkers labeling all of these resources. So of course we were taking everything that we could. But there was one, doors wide open and completely barren. All of the copper was gone. Everything else neatly put in its place, untouched. The dust that had settled showed footprints leading in and out of this location, hardly leaving a scrap behind. Though of course they weren't true footprints. They looked distorted and off. And those that were among us that were more trackers, like Justin, he led the expedition over here. He noticed that there were slight scrapings in the dust that seemed consistent with cloth. So, the suits that were still just suits. Coming in here with the clones to try and source this material, but only this material. He said we would come back another day to research it further and figure out exactly why they needed it, and only that. That's the end of that. Yeah.
Up next, HP. Your card is a 2 of diamonds. It is getting late in the day.
A savior was too focused on gathering materials that they lost somebody you were close to. Are they dead? How did their incompetence change the way you think about this savior? I mean, how did he even know that all they took was copper? I mean, Justin kept insisting this room had copper in it and it's the only thing gone. What? He just narrowed in. I mean, let's be fair, the guy had been rambling for days at this point. One prophecy after another, one warning after another. Always seemed to be one more piece. I can't... He's obsessed with something. Blinded by the sun or something. It finally cost us. The new 44 that had arrived couldn't take it anymore. Oh, sure, we had stuff. We have lots of stuff. But with no plan, no action, just the vague possibility of something, they couldn't take it. This obsession wouldn't work anymore. It had to go from obsession to action. And if it hadn't, well, we wouldn't be here telling the story about it.
I guess we're leaving the action up to our very
Yeah.
last play.
Two people to tie it up and a heroic death to cap it off. Sounds right.
Okay, Magic. I think what might be good too, unless you want to wrap everything up in a nice bow, we can figure out what happened at the end of all this in the final round.
Did Kaya still have to go, or am I out of...
Oh, no, I just totally forgot who I was referring to. Kai, you have you can wrap things up in nice bows.
Okay.
So our very last card, it is a King of Diamonds.
King of Diamonds. You found corporate overlords stockpiling resources in order to save themselves. How did the savior infiltrate their business? How did the savior deal with these scum? It's like the deck knows.
I believe in the heart of the cards, Kaya.
Thing is, this is not something that Justin could have said to just anybody, really. You understand why. He had been among them in his time. The way that Dane had been among them, but, you know, who knows why Dane went back in the end. But Justin... there was something else going on, something deeper, something driving him that nobody else could really understand. But I think he had been in deep enough to know exactly what they had been doing with all of that copper. Of course he knew it was copper. He had been part of that whole plan. He had been there when the people who had wanted to become something beyond themselves, something eldritch and strange, they called it post-humanism at the time. Who knows if they knew what they were actually doing. He had been there when those people had been laying down the lines, laying down those invitations, starting the summoning, and putting by enough to get themselves through. Little stockpiles, little safe houses. And, well, if he had been running around with all the secrets of the heavenly spheres in that briefcase, who else could have really been able to tell? By the time he knew enough to know he wanted out, by the time he knew enough to know that he wanted to warn people, it was too late for him to try to stop anybody from going through with it, pulling through the other side, the other kinds of suits, the warp to the weft. All he could do was hold the shears, trying to figure out exactly when to snip that thread of fate. Never speak ill of the dead and gone, I say, but is he? Is he really? Is he, Justin?
And so, now it is time. Magic, if you want to take us in for our final round. How does Justin die?
I would like to ask a clarifying question. HP. This
Yes.
new 44.
Sure.
I kind of took that as like a sort of sub-faction of the suits.
No, there was people that joined us. I thought I remembered there were 44 of them.
Oh, okay. Us being the humans,
The survivors.
the survivors. Okay.
At the amusement park.
This is
amusement
New
park.
Haven.
At the amusement park.
This
That's
is
it.
slowly
Haven-
growing in
New
size.
Haven growing.
And so there's, some warring opinions about how to save us all.
Okay.
There could be some suits, some reformed suits on their side, though. You could say that, I think.
We have spoken of at least suit switching sides explicitly and that sort of thing. Okay. I think I've got an idea. It wouldn't be a good hero story without some muck and mess in the midst of all of it, huh? A lot of people exchanging a lot of information, and oh my God, the opinions interweaved in between all of that too. It's just, there's never a clean cut. But if I look back and knowing what I knew at the time, before the new 44, decided to close in on him, I can't say I wouldn't have done it again the same way. We stormed that little bunker he was hiding up in. Must have been just taking care of the last few loose ends, typing away desperately as we stormed it. He didn't even flinch. 44 of us. Everything from sticks and pitchforks and torches, all the way up to the last guns we could find and everything in between. One final click. And just before he opened his palms to us and accepted his fate, he kicked over a briefcase, stuffed tight with a bunch of papers. The last thing he said to me was, "I think you'll enjoy the blanket of life. Call her Coral. Always keep her behind you." And I shot that final shot. He was dead instantly. I'll end it there.
Interesting. And so we make it to our final round. This is not really a storytelling round. However, this acts as a mix of aftercare for the players at the table, as well as an epilogue to the survivors you established throughout play. First, I'm checking in with all you. How y'all feeling right now?
I feel like we just told a really fucking epic story.
Great.
Yeah.
I don't know what the story was, but it was wild.
Or some part of it, I guess. I mean, it was cool, regardless.
I'm extremely curious what this thing with the blanket is.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I will tell you when we get there. I don't want to monopolize.
Well, technically, we're already there.
Okay.
That was your chance.
Would you like me to say now, or should we
Yeah,
go around a
let's
bit
hear it.
Well,
before?
let's talk openly.
Yeah.
What do you think happened after this? We don't have to go round by round, but you can just popcorn style. What do you think was where is the climax of this story? What happens after Justin is shot dead, and how do we survive the suits? What was the meaning of it all?
So I think I will interject right away then, since those are the kind of pointed questions at hand. My idea behind and the intent behind the blanket was essentially Justin in cahoots with Dane as his supervisor have essentially defected together to some degree. And Justin was a sort of primary creator of this protective shield that could like continuously float just in the right spot in the middle of space, formed by, insert a bunch of science here, a linking of all of these satellites that this anonymous group seemed like they were hacking, but they were actually trying to form them together in order to create a shield against the sun. So leave the blanket behind you, leave the blanket on the horizon, block enough of the sun to maintain your way of life and survive. And Coral was the kind of final conscious uplink into the algorithm to make that happen. Insert science and math here. That was the whole idea.
Matrixy.
Very
Also,
matrixy.
I wish I were lying that a giant mirror floating in space to deflect solar radiation was not a real life suggestion by real scientists. Anyway,
Schmapple scientists.
no, I'm talking
Absolutely.
about in this existence,
I
that
know,
is a
I
real
know.
theory, and I hate it.
Yeah.
They're our world schmapple.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, that was
Uh,
kind of the whole idea is part of like the whole survival attempt, and the defectors were essentially ending up helping the humans kind of thing.
Okay.
I think it's very interesting how we can grab one or two things along the way that kind of amuse us or stick to us for one thing or reason or another, and just kind of run with it in, I think, hysterical ways. I think that proper you had pointed out that I think it was a clarified question or point about, it basically amounted to, what the hell are these suits anyway? Because the suits went from, people that stormed in to, take other people away. They were apparently the militant arm of Schmapple. And then they became sentient suits, and then suits with, Kirby nondescript faces, and then clones, and then defecting clones that were on our side.
think Kaya and I kind of agreed that, like, I thought they were like some sort of angel or, something like that. Like,
Yeah.
anyone remember that one episode from Futurama where like fire creatures from the sun come and visit? And like take down a weird blue flame. It's a whole episode. You can look it up. But I remember I for some reason like thought of them like that, or like the villain from Scooby-Doo Cyber Chase. Like that's what I imagined them to be, and it very quickly was not that.
I actually kind of feel like they ended up being this sort of dichotomous thing where it was
they were a mix of all kinds of different ideas.
They were that, but the vibe I got was that they were like very much pieces of the sun living on Earth, but then also like posing as agents, I guess, going back to another Matrix illusion here, like agents, but so they kind of looked like people, but they weren't, and then the whole clone thing kind of fit like with that. I think we at least had enough
Kaya,
overlap.
Chrissy, or Ashton Rabbit, any comments about how you see this story wrapping up? Either right at the end or post-credit scenes. What do you see happening in the story? Anything that you say is true?
I mean, I'm happy for Coral's consciousness to basically be a floating web of mirror satellites floating in space forever. Like this is great. This is better than like 50% of the endings that I get in in RPGs usually. So
Love this.
Chrissy?
Yeah, I don't know. I like the way, but I'm I called our evil tech company Schmapples, so you guys see who I am as a person. But like
I would say, are you about to say that you enjoyed the like avant-garde nature of this ending, Ms. Schmapple?
I do kind of like it. I kind of like the interpret it as your own sort of. I don't know that I would change much about it. I really appreciated that we funneled it, right? Like we really did bring in from where we started to where we ended. We really funneled decently well. But I also think that's part of why I like games like this, to where like it's not always going to have a happy ending. And the ending doesn't have to be what we think, you know what I mean? So yeah, I'm gonna be the weirdo that says like, I kind of liked where we ended it. Like I like that kind of open-ended, take it for how you see it. I know Magic already described what he felt the blanket was, but like however you imagine that to be or whatever that is, I like that idea. So
I'm gonna agree with that. I like the idea that very obviously there's like a sect of people directly involved with this story, and can tell it in the way that we did, but more so in the sense that they understand that Schmapple was behind all this and that there is this blanket of life that can help protect us. But I also like the fact that there are so many other stories out there where people might be huddling underground or maybe have already created their new haven elsewhere, and are completely ignorant to the fact of what's going on. That the sun killed our planet. Let's start fresh. So leaving it open-ended in that sense allows people to just think however they want, but then also allows any future stories from this kind of realm to develop, because there's infinite possibilities there.
This is a great way for me to lead into my question. We're really close to our time, and so we're going to wrap up really shortly, but and we can do this a bit later. When we do outros, I'm going to ask you, just give me your first thoughts on like what was good and what was bad. But before we do that, I kind of want to say that this approached a solution to something that I was hoping this game would do, and generational became a really great tool for starting any campaign, because it meant that you had a whole world you had built together with your players. You had a shared language of how the world works, and the kind of like communities that you built together could very easily be adapted to playing your own homebrewed game. And I really liked that. I really liked that you could like come together and like make a world together and then continue to play in that world. And I feel like with the way this ended and the way the game kind of ran, I feel like it sort of did that as well, that you could play as survivors after your own particular cataclysm and play in a post-apocalyptic game. So I think that's really cool. I hope that you guys see that too. I'm going to write more of these kinds of games. I'm tentatively calling it the Almanac system, mostly because all of the games end with the word AL. But so from generational to cataclysmal, my next one will probably be operational. We'll see how that one goes.
Whatever it is I need in my life. I don't even know what it is, but inject it directly into my veins.
After operational is familial. There's a trend here. You're all welcome to my table. But we are at the end of our night, and I'm so glad you were all able to make it and tell stories with us. If you guys could go in overlay order, starting with Chrissy and ending with me, tell me about what you're doing in the next coming weeks, about any games that you have written or you want to promote, and if you have the time, any last thoughts on what you think the game did well, what you think could be improved, rules that didn't make a lot of sense, your favorite parts, your least favorite bits, whatever you like. Chrissy, hate to put you on the spot, but you're first.
Yeah, no, hey guys, I'm Chrissy Kritz. I played Chrissy and died as Chrissy. It's a strange sentence to say, but here we are. Yeah, so you can find me all over TBTK Discord. Come join us if you have not already. I mean, you can find me on Module Week. Module Week's a big one. So I am once a month in Madness Calls It Forth, ran by our wonderful, not GM tonight, but kind of the GM, Proper Nerdy. And then I'm also in Oath Sworn, and I am in Queen's Gambit, which is our Tyranny of Dragons campaign ran by Magic, who is also here with us tonight. So I get to hang out with cool storytellers all the time. You should join us and come hang out with us as well. Check out all the videos on YouTube. Trying to think of what else. Oh, I'm a Jasper's Game Day ambassador. So please feel free to support that cause. If you have questions about it, if you have anything you need in regards to mental health, please check out the links that we provide as well at !get help in chat. And yeah, I think that's it. If we're going in order, that means Ash is up next.
Hey, yo, that's me. Thank you, Chrissy. Hi, I'm Ash. I go by Ash and Rabbit here on Twitch and all over the internet. Today, I told the story of Ashley, but also of all the other awesome saviors out there. This was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for having me at this table. Everyone was amazing. I love you all. This is great. As far as what I have going on in the near future, you can usually find me over on Nat20, where I run a game called Against the Tides. That's set on the continent of Wildmount in the world of Exandria. So if you are into D&D and on the internet, you probably know what that is. That is back on Wednesday, so just in a couple days at 5 p.m. Pacific. Come check that out. Got a lot of fun people you might recognize. I am also a part of the persistent campaign over there, now deemed Plains Guarding Company, formerly Morningstar and Company, which started as Curse of Strahd and is now a bunch of awesome homebrew stuff that should be returning on Sunday. Stay tuned to Twitter for announcements for that. And then I also play in another awesome game that Magic here runs called Tenements of the Great Rift. I'm sure he will speak to that. But that is run over on his channel. That is a mix of Princes of the Apocalypse and homebrew. It's just the best. It's just come watch it. You're going to love it. As far as what I have going on here on TPK, the next thing is 2 weeks from now, I will be participating in the Iron GM competition along with Tate, I think is who I'm going against, which I am terrified because he was in the initial one. He's very good. I'm scared, but it's going to be great. It's going to be super fun. And I don't write games, but Proper and I have been talking on Twitter about one. So we're going to figure that out eventually.
It's still in here somewhere, don't worry.
It's still just bobbing around in there. We'll figure it out. It's okay. I'm gonna pass it over to HP.
Hello, I am the Last Hit Point Hero, and tonight I have had the great joy of taking part in Cataclysm with all of you fantastic people. What?
Sorry, Cataclysmal. I guess you were saying in the Cataclysm.
Sorry. Yes, my apologies. After the entire all system being put up, I just left off the all.
I don't know how I feel about this.
I've ruined it. It's over. I skipped it.
I'll forgive you eventually.
Yeah. Well, in any event, if you want to find me again, the next thing I'm on is Oats Warm Oats. Next Tuesday. Not today. A week from today. Yes. That's where I'm at. After that, I DM Cold Hands Warm Hearts on every other Friday and during module week, and I think that's me for now with a hot sauce one shot in my future, which I'm looking forward to greatly. Yeah, as far I really like story prompts for games like this. I love having those, couple questions to push a narrative in a way that gets away from what's expected. So I thought the story prompts are fantastic. The only thing I think could use a little refining is what we already talked about with the timeline stuff, because I'm still a little confused with how it played out. I think I know the role it's supposed to play, which is really good, but just its implementation, I think. So.
I have many thoughts on that.
That's me.
Over to Kaya.
All right. Hello, everybody. I am Kaya. Today, I kind of didn't actually play technically, the savior named Coral. I am actually thinking about the timeline, and I like the way that it is designed as a system, but I'm actually thinking it might not be the best fit for this particular game because and I haven't played Generational, but I can see how in Generational you want to be able to skip forward. But in this game, we're sort of figuring out what the Cataclysm is and what caused it. And because we need to know what caused it, it feels more natural to be skipping back and forth in time rather than saying the only things that we know are things that go forward in time. So that's just a bit of food for thought.
I like that. I like that thought.
In real life, I avoid real life as much as possible and live on Twitter as much as possible. So anybody who wants to see more of me can find me on Twitter at Rahab_Acatriel. I'm hoping that some kind soul will put that in the chat so that I don't have to spell it out. I played in a 100% rules as written Curse of Strahd game called Twice Bitten. That recently wrapped up, which frees me up for a whole bunch of other things that I want to do. For example, write more, micro TTRPGs. I have a solo journaling game called Her Odyssey, which is based on the Caltrop core system, where you can follow the journey of a wanderer as they try to find home. I will also be coming back to play Basic Witches, with TPK Roleplay on April 24th. That is a game about being high school witchy femmes who, go around casting spells with pumpkin spice lattes and liquid lipstick. I think, Chrissy, are you in that too? Yes. I am so excited for that game. And yeah, over to Magic.
All right, I'm Dat Magic Juice. My savior in this group of saviors was Justin. I think the only, along with the intermingling of the comments I've already made about some of the system playtesting we just did, I think I'm actually going to sort of oppose the funnel concept. I think that as a game system, I think it does really well to leave that aspect open and leave it up to the table as we did today to say, hey, maybe we want to explore more of a funnel concept, but also leave it to the next table to say, leave it as open as you want, but just have whatever connections you want to have as you tell the stories along the way. I think both could be great, and we decided to take one route today that worked out really well. But yeah, I think that's going to be it for that for now. And as far as stuff I have going on, Ash mentioned Tenements of the Great Rift. That is a, I always forget what we call it, but like a actual play, live play. We're doing it live campaign on my own channel every other Sunday at noon Central. And then right here on TPK every other Thursday with Queen's Gambit. Those are both D&D 5th edition campaigns based in some part on Wizards of the Coast modules, but also in a big part on my own homebrew, and then also whatever the characters and players contribute to. So hope to see you at those when you can make it. That's going to be it for me.
Hello, I have not been your GM, but I have been your host and guide. My name is Proper Nerdy. I'm a TPK staff member, role player, game master, and today a game designer. I have written 2 games in a similar style, Generational, which you can check out on my itch, as well as Cataclysmal. After this one posts to YouTube, we'll have both videos of both games being played. I highly recommend Generational because it works a little better. It's a little simpler, but it's a very good seed generator for a whole story, and I really love it. If you're a role player, if you're a game master, if you are a writer, an author, like if you just want to make a world with your friends on a Friday night, it's a very simple improvisational game that I think you'll all really enjoy. You can find me as Proper Nerdy on most places, including itch and Twitter, and on the TPK Roleplay Discord. We also have a Patreon, we have a YouTube, we have lots of ways to support us. And I really, really thoroughly appreciate you coming here to support me. So I cannot thank you enough. All 5 of you are welcome at my table anytime. 3 things I want to plug. One, next week on Monday, we're doing Madness Calls It Forth, our 8th episode, and we are hurtling towards the end. I am very scared, but it should be fine because I also have lovely players on that game. On June 6th, if you want to check out Generational as it leads into a campaign, they are running Generational as a session 0 for Oserix Franco's Dirt campaign, which will be starting later in the summer. They're using Generational as a way to develop the world of their own post-apocalyptic story. And last but not least, it's coming hopefully this summer. I plan to run a new show called Nautilus, all about Session 0 and world building games. Again, you are all welcome to join me if you have interest in playing these kinds of games more often. This is my formal way to say, please, if you'd like, come. It's not about the destination. It is about the journey, not about the destination. That is my tagline. Last but not least, I have written a rough draft of this game's epilogue, and I would like to read it to you before we leave. So HP, be ready when I call us out. But I'm going to read the conclusion now. Terry Pratchett once wrote, "Do you not know that a man is not dead while his name is still spoken? Our legacy is the stories that others tell us once we are gone. And this game believes that the stories of those most important to us must continue to be told. Just the simple act of telling stories is the magic to immortality." Once more from Terry Pratchett, this time from Reaper Man. "No one is finally dead until the ripples they cause in the world die away, until the clock wound up winds down, until the wine she made has finished its ferment, until the crop they planted is harvested. The span of someone's life is only the core of their actual existence." GNU Terry Pratchett, and thank you all for playing. Good night.